Hello, 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 and welcome back to the Premier Chelsea, your source for all things Premier League, but starting with Chelsea first. Coming to you on your speakers and headsets. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm one of your hosts, and I'm joined by my very excited co-host today, Rahul Lavia.
Moises Caicedo. Oh, I'm sorry. I was watching the Here We Go Moises Caicedo piece on loop. I've changed my name, I guess. I'm now going by Rahul Lavia. But I see you've changed your name too.
It's all in good fun. And I think for those who are listening, you may not see, but our little names or name tags on our video today is Rahul Lavia and Jacky Caicedo. So maybe we don't dwell on some different topics and we jump right into it, Rahul. How are we ruining football today?
Well, today we're ruining football because we spent 165, 70 million in the last week by bringing in 2 new players and locking down a midfield for the next decade or so. So I guess we're rooting football, but we're setting our team up for success.
So we're diving right into transfers. Let's start with Caicedo. Obviously, I've changed my name, all in good fun. But Rahul, this saga was going on for, I don't know, almost a year now. I think we were linked with him last summer and we were wondering, who's this guy, what's going on? There were rumors that Chelsea could have signed him for 4 million maybe 5-6 years ago. I don't know if that's true or it's all kind of linked in there, but I think realistically at the beginning of this transfer window, somewhere in May, the conversation started. Chelsea approaches Caicedo's camp, one way or the other, personal terms are agreed, and now the only hurdle is Brighton. Why don't you take us through the last week of how this played out, maybe throw in salt into the wound with Liverpool and how this all kind of played out?
Yeah, I think you've laid it out well, which is we've had a long-standing interest in Caicedo. He's had an interest in moving away from the little club of Brighton. And he wanted to go in January. I think Arsenal were in for him. Ultimately, he didn't go. He signed a new contract. I believe he brought on a new agent or a new group around him that would ultimately help facilitate the move away from Brighton at the end of the season. And Brighton were very well aware of the fact that he wanted to go and basically asked him to stay for the remainder of last season and get them through to their targets, which was getting into Europe. But the 𝐥𝐢𝐵 had said it, and Brighton, I think, as a club, knew that he was going to move on. So Chelsea was the one that came up as the season went on. Arsenal went away. They focused on Declan Rice. And Chelsea came up. They said, we want him. He's our guy. He's our signing that we want to bring in to partner with Enzo. And you said May, that is about the time frame where personal terms were agreed with him. We had to discuss with Brighton. We've been going back and forth, 60 million, 70 million, 80 plus 5. And then suddenly out of nowhere, we hear Liverpool are in for Caicedo as well. And Brighton are now saying, because we have a bidding war, we're setting a deadline. And we've set the deadline as it was last Thursday, I believe, at midnight. And so all of this is going down. Liverpool put a bid down. And not only do they put a bid down, they put down a British record fee of 110 million, which for Liverpool, you and I know, and a lot of our listeners know, that's huge money. That's money that they probably don't even talk about like as the joke. So for them to put that down was really a statement of their intent. And at that point, honestly, Jacky, I think Thursday when I got home from work around 6 p.m., you and I were texting. We're like, I think we've lost out on him. This is disappointing. How did we let this happen? And to be fair, all summer long, you've said 60, 70, 80 million for one player is a lot. Why don't we invest in 2 players? And so maybe you weren't feeling it as much, but I definitely was, because it wasn't the fact that we were losing out on him. It was the fact that we're losing out on him to Liverpool, who's a direct rival. They're a rival that would get strengthened by this addition. But for some reason or the other, there was no here we go. And I bring this back to what I was listening to at the beginning, because, yeah, Liverpool put it down. Brighton said, yep, we're in favor. Caicedo was supposed to go in for a medical from London to Liverpool on Friday, and turns out on Friday morning, Caicedo said, no, I've given Chelsea my word. I want to go to Chelsea, to Liverpool. And that's where it all kind of stalled for Liverpool and fell apart. because then Chelsea stepped in, and maybe they were talking in the background, but really that's when Chelsea said, you know what, we're going to put the money down. And in fact, we're going to put even more down than you, Liverpool, just to show you that we're serious about signing him. And to cut to the end, he's here. He's our player. We've put on £115 million, which is the second British transfer record we've broken in this year alone. But he comes in, and we've seen the videos and the announcement. And I do have to give credit to the Chelsea video or social media, or whatever you want to call it, team, because that was a very well put announcement video. It wasn't like overthinking it. It was simple. The song choice, finesse, which could suggest of what Caicedo did to Liverpool with using a red car, which was in his background many years ago, now changing that to blue, another little hint of him choosing the right side. But ultimately, he's here and he's our player.
I stayed quiet there because there's a lot to process while you went through kind of the saga. I think that's the best word to use. It was a saga because I look back at the beginning of the window, Rahul, and I knew we were targeting him as our #1 target for the summer. And Brighton had floated the idea of 100 million and Chelsea floated the idea of 60, 70, 80. And I said, if we're not going to reach this 100 million mark, let's just go spend 100 million on 2-3 more players to bolster Mauricio Pochettino's midfield. But when Liverpool come in and bid 110 and we come in and bid 115 plus a sell-on clause, I believe is what's come out from the whole negotiation, I wonder if Chelsea just paid the 100 million a month ago, maybe wouldn't have this back and forth. But listen, hindsight 2020, I think Chelsea wanted this young 21-year-old Ecuadorian international. He's had a great season for Brighton. I believe he was Brighton's player of the year. I hope we stop buying Brighton's player of the year every year because the last one didn't work out. I'm not going to mention the name here, but we've been crying out for a strong defensive midfielder to not only replace the likes of, N'Golo Kante, and even maybe going back to the likes of 𝐥𝐢𝐤𝐞, even Makelele, but to also unlock our previous record that we paid for, which was Enzo, and allow him to do less defensive work and attack more. So, fees aside, I think we've got a good player on our hands. He's young, like I said earlier. I'm excited to see what the partnership does, and it's going to be something that he signed on to an 8-year contract, I believe, which Enzo is also on an 8-year contract. So like you said at the beginning of this segment, our midfield for the next decade is realistically set. And before I can relax and take a breath and said our midfield rebuild is done, Romeo Lavia comes in. Romeo Lavia comes in. And Rahul, I bring in Lavia for the mix because I think it's important to talk about that. That was Liverpool's top target all summer long, and Southampton wanted 50 million for him, and Liverpool floated, just like Chelsea, 45 plus add-ons, and we'll get there. As both deals are stalling out, Chelsea make a cheeky 48 or 49 million pound bid, and I'm wondering, what are Chelsea doing here? We've just dropped the whole Caicedo thing and kind of getting Lavia now because, again, back to the number, we're at half price. We can get a younger guy at 19, also good defensively. Yes, maybe not the same level, but we'll get there, and we'll see what happens. And, of course, you tell the continuation of the story where Liverpool says, no, we're going to go bid on your target now. But listen, London is blue. There's only one team in the Premier League that has this pull, and that's Chelsea Football Club. Ultimately, they end up getting both, Rahul. 55 million, I think, is the final price for Lavia. Of course, includes add-ons and things like that. But how excited are you about these two young, strong, attacking, defensive, all-round maybe midfielders that have come into the club?
Look, I'm ecstatic because we've gone from, and I'm not disrespecting any of our past players, but we've gone from a midfield that we've said was maybe a little too easy to get by, a little too light, apart from maybe N'Golo Kante, but he had his injuries problems. And not to say that any of these players can't have injuries, but you look at it and you say, Enzo, young, and we will get to how great he was in that Liverpool game, but he's come in, and sure, maybe he's not had the best time, but we've seen flashes of his brilliance in the end of last season. Moises Caicedo had a brilliant season, like you said, for Brighton. Romeo Lavia, sure, he got relegated with Southampton, but he has tremendous potential in that position, and there's a reason Liverpool were in for him. There's a reason Chelsea were in for him and ultimately got him. At one point, I believe even Arsenal may have looked at him as an option. So he got relegated, but that was an opportunity for some of these bigger teams to say, you know what, this works for us in our favor. And I'm excited because we have 3 young talents in our midfield that we can build around, we can work around, and the more they play together, the more they develop together, they'll understand each other a lot better and know where things and how to play each other. And sure, we've said 8-9 years with Moises Caicedo, Enzo. No one knows what happens in that much time, right? Real Madrid come calling, and that changes everything. But we're doing all the right things, which is, and maybe we're doing it a little too fast, which is where people are questioning and getting a little jealous. But we're doing all the right things from our perspective and building a team that honestly, like, maybe not this year, maybe not next year, but in a couple of seasons, there's going to be like brilliant players that are going to be hitting their peak or getting close to it, or not even getting into it, but developing into a point where you and I are just sitting back and saying, wow, what a summer we had in 2023.
It's the next generation that we saw maybe in 2003, 2004, that, you know, Abramovich and Jose Mourinho assembled, where the likes of Lampard, I think, was 24, John Terry, 24, Drogba came in 23, 24. Actually, Cole joined later. He was 21, 22. Petr Cech was 21 when he came in. And there were a lot of other pieces that came in over time. Of course, Michael Essien and Michael Obi, just a few to join that list that lasted a decade, Rahul. They came with us on this journey and they were immensely successful. And so as we add these young players, and I think you did a very good job of saying maybe they're not there today, but what will they be in 6 months' time, in a year, in 2 years, hell, in 5 years, when they have been playing together for a while? We've maybe changed a couple of pieces here because realistically, maybe not every single player is going to work out. And I think that has to be the honest truth from us as Chelsea fans. Some may not work out. Some may have to move to a different club. Some may have to go on loan for a little bit to figure it out. Maybe not the names we just mentioned, but there is a bigger picture going on here. And so I'm excited for what the future holds. And before we talk about how we're ruining football, because you dived into it a little bit, we continue to ruin football. And I think we've paid the £35 million release clause for Michael Olise from Crystal Palace. So another attacking midfielder coming in. Before we talk about us ruining football, are you happy with the signing? Do you think we need this position?
I do think we need it. He's young again. You look at it, we're not spending 100 million, 115 million on developed talent. We're investing in potential, and that word here is key: investing. So for rival fans, for fans that are calling us that we're ruining football or ruining and the FFP doesn't stand, these are investments. The owners and the club are looking at it as like assets that they're investing into. And I say assets when I feel bad for calling a human being or a player an asset, but ultimately any football club's players are its main assets, in the sense that we generated over 100 million selling Eden Hazard, right? That's what funded the next few purchases. So yeah, look, we're doing all the right things. We're moving the right way. Sure, we'll get into a few more topics here about selling players that maybe have come through the academy, and that hurts. But Michael Olise, one that was part of our academy many, many years ago, he's gone away. He's done a good job in the Crystal Palace team, and he can come back, work with the younger squad again, and develop into maybe a player that we would have spent a lot more in the future.
And especially with Christopher Nkunku's injury, there are a lot of people, at least from what I've read online, that are looking at Raheem Sterling and wondering if he's going to make the step up, or is he somebody that they may move on. There are a couple of guys that may be unsettled over the long period of time of not maybe getting enough game time. So I think it's a good move. I think he's going to get a good amount of team time and game time. And I know when we have African Cup of Nations, we're short a striker. I don't know if Chelsea are going to go to the market a striker, but maybe that means Nkunku slides in when Jackson's out, and then Olise still gets more game time playing in that number 10 or attacking position. So excited all around for transfer business. I don't know if Chelsea's quite done yet. Every day we're linked with a different position for maybe a goalkeeper or another striker or maybe another attacking midfielder, but it's going to be interesting. We'll save some of that conversation for later. I want to talk about us ruining football and mainly the FFP regulations around it. And before I start talking, I'll just preface this by saying I'm not a businessman. I don't understand all the rules, but I think, Rahul, between you and I, we watch enough videos and content. We read a lot about Chelsea Football Club, about other clubs in FFP, and try to understand what's going on. But Simon Johnson does a really good, take on this on Talk Sports. So I'll kind of use some of the words he said before, but you use the players as terms of assets. So let's use it as an asset. When you buy an asset, in this case a player, and you're spending 100 million and they sign 5, 6, 7 year, 8-year contract, you as a club can break down the cost of that purchase over the length of the contract. So for easy math, you have a 100 million pound player, signs a 5-year contract, you only put it on your books 20 million for each single year. So let's say Chelsea signed 5 players, each 100 million. It can be like £1 billion spent, but when you break it down, it's 100 million for that first year of FFP rules. Now, how do we cover that first year of FFP rules? We said goodbye to Mason Mount. We said goodbye to Kai Havertz. We said goodbye to Mendy, to a bunch of different players that equated to about 140, 150 million pounds in sales. And so I think what's important to note is for this year and maybe for next year, we'll be okay. But the whole strategy behind this, Rahul, of investing this much upfront is that we shouldn't have to keep investing this much every single transfer window because it's not sustainable. Because eventually you're going to run out of players to sell, and some of them may flop and not go for the value that you've put on your books. And the other reason ultimately is you need to get back into the Champions League because that's a big source of revenue that adds to the books to help us kind of do these things. But hopefully that math made sense. Maybe you can chime in and add a couple of points here, Rahul, but that's kind of how we're ruining football, but we're balancing our FFP books, I guess, is what it comes down to.
Yeah, I think you've done a good job of explaining how it's being broken down. So, sure, on the face of it, Moises Caicedo is 115 million, but for an 8-year contract, that doesn't come out to be 115. It's 14 million this year.
Right.
So Chelsea, like you said, will put 14 on their books for this year and move on to next year, and it'll be 14 for the next 8 years. When you look at what the players we've sold, like you said, I think we've generated a little bit over 200 million, and from the players we've bought, we've spent maybe 250 something. So our net spend for this year is 50 million, which when you compare it to some of the other clubs, Arsenal, Man City, Man United, we're much lower than all of these clubs, right? And so you almost have to take everything that's being reported, and sure, as rival fans, you don't want to look at the layers below it, but for us, even when you and I talk and talk offline, we're like, wow, we're spending this much money, we hopefully won't run into any issues. And then you look at the layers below, and there's a lot of thought and process that goes into it from the club. It's not just saying, let's just throw money everywhere and ruin football and ruin the market, because the market is the market, right? And if we want a player, we're going to have to pay for a player unless the contract's running down or there's other situations. But we wanted Enzo, we had to pay up, we got him. We wanted Caicedo, we had to pay up, we got him. But we've also identified a Nicholas Jackson that we did have to spend 100 million on. We brought him in early. And everyone, even rival fans, are saying that's a really good signing. That's a player that maybe we should have picked up. So, sure, you can focus on the big shiny toys, which are the 100+ million pound players, but we're also doing smart business by bringing in players that have the potential of hitting those heights, but we're getting them in early and saying, do that here, and we'll reap the benefits of that. So, again, it all comes down to the success, and sure, we can do this for the next 2-3 years, but if we're not getting back into the Champions League, if we're not winning trophies, looking at getting more fans into the stadium by expanding or doing something different, we can't keep doing this in the long run. So as Chelsea fans, we're happy, we celebrate, we keep looking forward to next signings. It's been 48 hours since the last one, but jokes aside, I feel good about the way we're moving forward. Now, the success has to come from the pitch.
It really does. And I want to add a few more things on this FFP, Rahul. I went to buy a jersey this morning, and it was completely sold out. So Chelsea fans, keep doing what you're doing. Spend your money to help pay for Caicedo and Lavia, because, listen, that's all included money that we need for these things. But one more thing we've missed, and we've talked about it quite a bit this season, Rahul, is you're actually wearing the new jersey. You're one of the first to get it. It doesn't have a sponsor. And a sponsor can equate to another 20, 30, 40, 50 million per year, depending on how you structure the deal. And so I think that Chelsea are yet to recognize some revenue. And I know we've been linked with Infinite Athlete. We've been linked with some adult sites that I wouldn't mention here. But there are a few things that could happen in the next weeks, months here, that could help maybe even offset FFP even more. And I think Todd Boehly is a very, very smart man. We've given him a lot of criticism for maybe being too involved or being in the dressing room. But if you go to look at it, I think you don't become a billionaire by making stupid decisions. You have to invest your money wisely. He's probably the first man that brought the 8-9 year contract segment to the Premier League, finding a loophole. Maybe that's the right word. and he's making it work. And even for the Caicedo deal, Rahul, we were told or led to believe that Todd Bowley stepped in with 𝐵𝐵𝐵𝐵𝐵 to get the deal across the finish line. So I think they know what they're doing, at least for now. Time will tell in the next 5, 6, 7 years. But the owners are involved, trying to pour in money into the stadium as well, like you said, as additional revenue streams. So I think things are looking positive. Let's talk about the negatives for just a second.
I just want, before we move on to that, and I just want to also add that when they're giving out these contracts, there's in no way a suggestion that they're here, like the owners are here for that long. But obviously, they're giving out these contracts with the intention that they want to be here for the long term. They're not here where they spend 2.5 billion, 3.5 billion, whatever it came out to. They want to throw in all these players and assets and then go to the next, venture capitalist or equity firm and say, look, the value of Chelsea has doubled since we've been there. We want to sell. They want to be here. They want to do this the right way. They want to bring success like they've done with their other franchises. So will it work? Only time will tell, but we're doing things differently, which is disrupting the world of football, and people don't like it, but that's when Chelsea flourish.
That's indeed when we flourish. You said we're doing things differently, and I'm coming back to my negative comment, Rahul. To make money and to make pure profit, one way to churn this out is to sell homegrown talent. Those are the kids that have been at Chelsea for 10, 15, in some cases 20 years, that yes, you've invested time and yes, you've invested training in, but you haven't invested any upfront capital to purchase them. And again, I hate using the word purchase them because they're not a commodity, but purchase their contract or break their contract to bring them to Chelsea Football Club. So Mason Mount is a great example. 55 plus add-ons, that pure profit for Chelsea can be recognized in the same year as a full profit deal. And as we keep going down this FFP or a big squad and who's going to be sold, names that keep popping up, Rahul, unfortunately, are names that have come from the academy. So the sale of Conor Gallagher keeps coming up. No matter how much we try to say we like him, he's a Chelsea boy, he fights for his place, he's done fantastic. We'll talk about him in the Liverpool game in a few minutes here. Why does his name keep coming up? And most recently, Lewis Hall just signs a 6-year contract. I think he's 18, 19 years, plays midfield, plays left back, might have even played better than Cucurella last season whenever he was called upon. He's being called to be sold maybe for 30, 35 million, which in all honesty is great for an 18, 19-year-old that's played maybe 10 games in the Premier League. But these are boys that have been there, have that blue blood flowing through them. At least we'd like to think they have that blue blood flowing through them. I don't want to talk about Mason Mount right now, but those are the ways you make profit. But could you see this as a negative impact? Do you think that means long-term, young, talented footballers will say, I don't really want to join Chelsea's academy because all I'm going to do is work really, really hard then be sold off to the highest bidder?
Yeah, there is a scenario or world where that becomes a concern, and it hits us Chelsea fans a little bit more because for many years we've been told we only buy. We've been buying our success. We've not brought anyone through. John Terry is the only one, and now we have players that have come through, and we've sold. Even just this summer, you mentioned Mason Mount, but also Loftus-Cheek, who came through. Sure, he's had an unfortunate injury that maybe derailed his career at Chelsea a little bit. But Hudson-Odoi is another one that's looking to move on. Tammy Abraham has gone in the past. Tomori's gone in the past. So it does hurt. But when you look at what the club's doing and trying to do, and you say there is a method to the madness. Now, in the Lewis Hall situation, I do question the owners and the way that the decisions are being made, because you just give a new contract. He's supposed to be going on loan, and suddenly you're saying, you know what, we'll just sell you for 30, 35 million, which, sure, you could put a buyback clause in there and say in 2 years' time, we'll pay you 50 million Newcastle because we think he'll flourish and we want to bring him back. But that's where the loan system comes in. And maybe it doesn't bring you the revenue that you want, but there are other players within the squad that are homegrown that maybe could move on. And I'm not suggesting that we sell our homegrown talent, but you look around and you say, we now have 5 defenders, center backs. Is Chalobah part of the plans? Is he one that could maybe move on and bring you a similar amount of money? So that hurts a little bit, but ultimately, as fans, we can only control what we can do and say and try to prevent it from happening. But if the club's decided, the players decided it makes sense, the club's going to do it.
And I think that's key. The player also has to decide. We're hearing a couple of rumors that Lewis Hall might have been a Newcastle fan growing up, and so this for him is a dream move. I don't know for sure, but if the player is not interested in being in the project, and I think Pochettino has reiterated this, Chelsea fans have said this, because we've lost many a good player that we said, if they don't want to be here, they don't want to be part of the project, then we should allow them to leave. I think Man City have taken a similar approach for many players. And so in Lewis Hall's case, again, I don't know the facts here, Rahul. We're just hearing rumors. If he doesn't want to be here, a good offer comes in. And again, I repeat, 30 million for an 18-year-old who's played 10 Premier League games. I understand there could be a lot of potential there, but again, it's a great move and Chelsea will find the next one. But I think a lot of the academy players should look at 𝐵𝐵 and maybe Pochettino should look at the academy long-term and see who he can pick out from there. I'm hoping that Armando Broja gets a chance when he's back fit and maybe he can break into the squad and show it's not just 𝐵𝐵 in recent times that has not only gone to become captain, held down this team, another couple of guys can break through, because ultimately there's only 11 spots on the field. There's only 22 in a main squad. You've got 50, 60 guys going through the academy from the age of 8. You drop 10, 15, going into under 16, drop 10, 15, coming to the under 18s, under 21s. You're down to a very small amount of players that can realistically break into the Chelsea men's team. And it's definitely hard. So I don't think we'll cry over all of them, but there's some that have shown real potential that I think we want to make sure the right things are being done to nurture that talent, and we don't have to spend the money.
Yeah, look, like we said this, right? We can't keep spending this kind of money. So how do we do that? We bring players through, we invest in them early, and avoid getting into the scenarios where we have to spend 100+ million back-to-back windows. In the case of Lewis Hall, I look at it and I say he's done well at left back, but you have players like Ben Chilwell ahead of him. Sure, you can say he's done better than 𝐾𝐻𝐤, which he has, but 𝐾𝐻𝐤 is still a senior member of the squad. And then you have Ian Maatsen, who's coming back and also play that position. And then you look at Lewis Hall and say, well, where else can he play midfield? And now we've just spoken about two players that we brought in. You mentioned Conor Gallagher. We have Andre Santos still part of the squad. So there are a lot of players that he has to get over to get into either of the positions that he would like to play in. So a move, in my opinion, a loan move makes more sense. But if we need the money and if we're doing this, Jacky, I'm almost feeling that we have other plans for other positions to almost counteract and say, oh, we'll bring in 30 here so we can go spend 60, 70 on maybe a striker.
Wouldn't that be an interesting turn of events, especially with, I think, 14 days or 15 days left in the transfer window? Chelsea leaving it late,
that's enough
I guess.
For like 5 players.
At this point, Chelsea sign a player every 3 days. I don't know how to keep up with it. But listen, as Chelsea fans, we're excited. I think you said something very important. Only time will tell if this model will work, and we'll let that go. But Rahul, let's take a quick break here for a word from our sponsors, and we will be right back. All right, we've talked enough about us ruining football. I think let's move on to some positives, back to the Premier League. It was the opening fixture. Rahul, you and I have waited for this for a long time because last season we couldn't wait for it to end, I guess is the easy way to say that. And this season, after watching preseason and going on tour with Mauricio Pochettino, talking to him, talking to the players, I think we couldn't wait for the season to begin. What a way to start with Liverpool. Big game. And you and I have built up to it, not only in the last episode, but in previous episodes, talking about how do we feel about Liverpool as the opening fixture. Do you want to run through the starting 11 and then we'll kind of discuss that really quickly before we go through our emotions and feelings over everything here?
Yeah, let's do that. So in an interesting turn of events, Robert Sanchez started in goal. And I know we've been putting a pin in that Kepa topic, but now we have to pull that pin out because he's no longer here at the club, at least for the year. But coming back to the lineup, a back three, Jacky, which was an interesting take because all preseason long we've seen back four, and we know Pochettino prefers a back four. So it was interesting to see that he made that switch, and from what we hear and are told, it was a switch pretty much last minute to counteract the threat of Liverpool. But Disasi comes in for his debut, Thiago Silva and Levi Cole as the back three, 𝐵𝐵 James and Ben Chilwell as the wing backs, Enzo and Gallagher in midfield, Raheem Sterling, Carney Chukwuemeka, and Nicholas Jackson in attack.
Yeah, we've barely talked about Axel Disasi, Rahul. I think he was also a last-minute transfer, came out of left wing. I don't mean that literally. I mean, just we were not expecting to sign another center back. Obviously, with Chalobah getting injured, don't know how long he's going to be out for, and with forget his name now, Fofana out for the entire season. This is a good way to fill the gap. But he comes in and you wonder, yep, it's good depth. We'll use him later on. But nope, first game of the season against Liverpool. We've never seen him before. He's in the back three alongside Silva and Colwell. And then, of course, Sanchez in goal. Rahul, before we go on any further, you just pulled the pin out of the 𝐵𝐻𝐵 discussion. Chelsea keeping things late. 𝐵𝐻𝐵 was our first choice goalkeeper all through preseason. And in fact, when we signed Robert Sanchez, there was no link of 𝐵𝐻𝐵 leaving. It was going to be a competition between Sanchez and 𝐵𝐻𝐵 for number one. Bayern Munich come, say we want to take 𝐵𝐻𝐵 on loan. And you, I think, were probably jumping for joy in your boots there, saying, I'm pulling this pin out. I want this guy out of the club. He's not my first choice goalkeeper. I'm paraphrasing. Rahul may come and argue with me here, guys. But immediately a day later, Real Madrid come in and say, we would like to take 𝐵𝐻𝐵. And I'm sitting here. My buddy Rahul hates 𝐵𝐻𝐵, doesn't want him as the number one. But two of the biggest teams in Europe and possibly the world are fighting for his signature. Ultimately, he signs with Real Madrid, season-long loan, no option to buy, so we could see him back here next season if things don't go to plan. What are your true feelings about 𝐵𝐻𝐵, and what do you make of this loan move of him going to Real Madrid?
You know, I had to make some phone calls when we kept putting a pin in it. So I called Tuchel. No, I'm just kidding. Honestly, it was a surprise to me because I know he had a good relationship with Thomas Tuchel while he was here, but I didn't think it would be enough for Thomas Tuchel to come back to Chelsea and say, that's the one player I want from the squad. And maybe we've had quite a bit of turnover, so Tuchel was just waiting to see who's left over. But yeah, it was one. Honestly, when it first came out, my thoughts were, we still haven't done the Caicedo deal. We're looking for an attacker. Adding a goalkeeper into the mix with maybe about 3 weeks ago off the window, it's just going to be a lot to figure out. But
right.
Real Madrid come in and we spoke about that Real Madrid knock, right? When Thibaut Courtois tears his ACL, they immediately look for a backup. And I'm almost wondering, David De Gea was their main target before Courtois. He's sitting there at home waiting for a club, and they still come to us and say, we want 𝐵𝐻𝐵. And 𝐵𝐻𝐵 obviously at that point is going to say, I want to go, which is totally fair. But he's gone. From what I saw from Robert Sanchez, he was okay, but he did a few things that 𝐵𝐻𝐵 hasn't done in the whole time he's been here. So I already see a little bit of an improvement. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful to 𝐵𝐻𝐵, but hopefully he has a great season at Real Madrid. They decide to keep him, and we can move on from this chapter.
Rahul is praying that 𝐵𝐻𝐵 stays with Real Madrid and they pay a good fee to recoup the 70-odd million we paid for him. No, listen, I wish him all the best. I've never had an issue with 𝐵𝐻𝐵, maybe to the level that some Chelsea fans have had with 𝐵𝐻𝐵. I think he's been an okay keeper, maybe not world-class, but he's been there and he's been good for us in certain situations. So wish him all the best. Rahul, let's move on to the defense. Axel Disasi, I kind of played it up a little bit of maybe he was a backup. We wouldn't get to see him. We're used to a back two. He was okay. We'll talk about the goal, but I think he grew into that game and he didn't let him get his confidence get knocked out. And how do you feel about his position and maybe his ultimate game for that entire match?
I think you put it right. He grew into that game like most of Chelsea did, because he's come in. He's had no preseason time. In fact, his announcement came out while you and I were sitting at FedEx Field watching Chelsea play. So he's had no time to gel, to understand the players in a game. Sure, you can do it in training, but it's different, especially in the Premier League against Liverpool. So there were moments with his positioning where I was a little bit like, oh, I don't know if this is the right time to be playing him. But as time went on, he gets that goal. He then turns into this like machine where nothing gets by him. And I'm like, all right, I see what we've invested in here. And I do have to give credit to Thiago Silva and 𝐥𝐤𝐻, because at halftime, I don't know if you caught it. I know you were at the bar. But at halftime, they come out and you can see Thiago and 𝐥𝐤𝐻 having a conversation. And then 𝐥𝐤𝐻 goes up to Axel and they're having a conversation. And the second half was completely different from Disasi than the first half. And And maybe that's Thiago Silva giving some pointers and saying this is what you should do, you shouldn't do, hold your position and all of that. But that's what you want from a player like Thiago Silva, and you want Disasi to take that on and implement it. So I'm looking forward to seeing more of him. But will it be in a back three or back four? We'll wait to find out.
Yeah, and listen, I think with Thiago Silva approaching 39 or about to pass 39 here, Chelsea have signed some good players that could potentially fight for that position, right? So if Disasi keeps up what we saw, he's a great option for that position. Fofana coming back from injury is a great option for that position. You got Levi Colwill on the left, who's ultimately maybe going to battle it out with Badiashile, or maybe it's a combination of these players together, depending on who's fit and who's the best at that particular position during that time. So you said it earlier. We're pretty set at that center back position. No concerns, no comments. You can play a back three. You can play a back two. Hell, you could play 4 center backs and have enough players to play over there. So exciting. Rahul, what did you make of your wing backs? I want to talk about Ben Chilwell. I know that he has been a hot commodity all preseason long. He's been maybe playing like a left winger at times, and he definitely did not leave us disappointed in this game.
He didn't, and you can see what him and Reece bring to the squad and to this team when they're both playing. And I want to say part of that switch was to exploit that width and those runs that both of them bring. And maybe on a different day, a few crosses from either side go in. Nicholas Jackson puts them in, or one of the other attackers. So they help stretch Liverpool and create some spaces in between the lines on the inside. But I'm happy with both of them. And I also actually like the fact that he took both of them off. Sure, we could have lost this game, and then I would be telling you, why did he take them off? But he took both of them off. He didn't say, go out, play the full 90 minutes, because maybe they're not ready for it. Maybe they're not at their fitness-wise. And you have players that can come in and do a good job. And Malo Gusto, we've spoken very highly of him. Ian Maatsen, another one. So if they can continue to build upon this and get fitter and get better, we're going to be looking good.
Yeah, and I think he even took Reece James off. We all thought that Reece had another injury. We were praying to the footballing gods that it wasn't. Luckily, Pochettino confirms it's just physical fitness, which is, it's okay at this point in the season. I think if he can keep this up over the next 3, 4, 5 games, that'll be great. What a blessing to have someone like Malo Gusto come on, who has also impressed us in preseason. You can keep that pace, that tenacity, that level that we want to see from Reece's backup. And I use backup with quotes here because he's looking really good so far. I don't want to jinx it, but happy to see him come on. And Maatsen, Rahul, we've been impressed with him all preseason long, so happy for him to get a chance as well. I'm going to skip the midfield duo and let's talk about the attacking three. We'll start with Nico Jackson because I think it was pretty positive. He didn't get the goal, maybe didn't take the chances, but what I recall, Rahul, was that 90th minute or 89th minute lung-busting run that he does by himself, and he kind of finds a way to slip in Mudryk. It doesn't end with a goal, but last season, you have Kai Havertz up top, and I don't think, maybe I'm wrong, but I think you can correct me here. I don't think Kai Havertz makes it even half the length of that run that Jackson did in the 89th minute, let alone the entire game. Kai Havertz is not doing that. For me personally, I was excited. It was very refreshing to see someone who's ready to give all to get a goal. And it's a sign of good things to come, because if you're able to do that and struggle, I'm not using it in a negative connotation, but he had to put up with Van Dijk and Konate maybe pushing him, bullying him, pushing him around, and he still wants to go. I think it's a sign for good things to come.
He terrorized both of those guys, and for a young guy to come in first game of the season wearing that number 15 on opening day reminds me of another player. I'm not going to say it. He terrorized them, and you could see that his runs, his ability to hold them off, his ability to just make runs where he wasn't going to get the ball but open up space for others. They had to learn all of that on the fly, and on a different day, he gets a goal, one of those chances in that first half, I believe, where the cross comes in from Reece. He has to bury that as we go forward, because that's how he's going to gain confidence. That's the reason he's in this team. Everything else he does is great, but we need the goals, right? And that's what he's here to do. But we've waited for the striker. We've waited for someone to come in like this and do these things where it gets us to the edge of our seat. It gets us off the seat, and you're on the bar. You're taking a sip of your beer, and you're holding on, and you're like, it's just exciting. And we've gone from a Lukaku who did it for 2 games and then decided to be a baby. Aubameyang did it for a few games but didn't get the chance. I can go all the way back to Morata, who did it for a few games. And the key for Nicholas Jackson is he's going to have to kick on and continue doing it as teams figure him out, as teams realize what his strengths are, what his weaknesses are. He's going to have to develop his game as we go. But he seems determined. He seems like he wants to make this happen. And that's where I think it will set him apart from some of the other guys that may have started off well and then fallen off.
Yeah. And you talked about his strengths and weaknesses. I don't want to be too critical in the first episode of this season, but some of the weaknesses I saw would have been the players behind him in this case, and that's Raheem Sterling and 𝐾𝐨𝐤𝐞 Chukwuemeka. And 𝐾𝐨𝐤𝐞, Rahul, I'll say this. I think he tried very hard. He kept moving. He kept trying to find a position, but I think I want a little bit more end product from him. He would give the ball away a little too much or maybe not come off with the dribble, but he's also another one that's 18 or 19 and trying to find his way. And if you have a Christopher Nkunku, I don't think 𝐾𝐨𝐤𝐞's playing that game. Or maybe if Pochettino finds a little more trust in Madueke or with Mudryk, you're not seeing Chukwuemeka in that one. So I'll give him a little bit of slack. But Raheem Sterling, he is probably at this point our highest earner in the team. He's definitely not impressed us in preseason, and that's just you and I sitting down talking together. A lot of fans online are frustrated with Raheem Sterling as well, and I think I say that I don't want to be overcritical because I'm not expecting him to score goals every week or assist every week. We've always said that. But Rahul, that entire first half, the basic things were not getting done right. I mean, every time the ball came to Raheem, I was in a bar with 30, 40 odd people from the Houston supporters group, and everybody'd say, yep, Raheem's going to lose it. And right on cue, Raheem Sterling would lose that ball. And it's very frustrating and disheartening because, as I repeat myself, the senior most player, highest earner, won so many Premier Leagues, cups with Manchester City. Where's it going wrong? What does he have to do different?
He just has to give the ball to Reece, which is honestly where things were working in that first half, which was the quick movement between him and Reece, where Reece would give it to him, make the run, he would give it right back to him. Because, and I want to say that Raheem Sterling can come good. I want to say that there is a player in there that we've invested in. And we saw maybe a few flashes of it where he was trying to take people on, but he would just run into them. He wouldn't even try to do anything. And that's where the frustration comes up is if you're going to run at them and you don't think you can take them on, don't lose the ball. Maybe stop, protect the ball with your body, get others to come in, just do something, get a foul, get a free kick at the edge of the box for all we care. But do something that doesn't just lose the ball and then you have to run back, or in his case, in some cases, he was walking back. But I do have to say he played that position fairly well in the sense that he was always there as an option to receive the ball. He was positionally aware of what he had to do. So for as critical, even I was texting you as soon as you get the ball, like, we should just be ready to defend you because it's coming right back. And I think he just needs to be a little bit smarter about it. And maybe he's feeling the pressure of there's a lot of youngsters around me, I need to be doing more. But don't feel that way. Trust these guys. Let them be there for you and you be there for them, and it'll work out because we need him to be there as that option where we're not saying I'd rather have Chukwuemeka have it or I'd rather Nicholas Jackson have it because Raheem's going to lose it. That's just going to continue to hurt his confidence and his form. But I'm staying positive with him. I've been negative around him quite a bit, so maybe I change my tactic and it changes for him too.
And one thing Pochettino is good at, Rahul, is helping some of these guys build up their confidence. So I'm hoping that he's maybe putting an arm around Raheem and saying, it's not a worst performance, but it's not the Raheem Sterling that we know you can be. So keep working towards that. And I have a feeling that when Madueke is fit and maybe there's more trust in Mudryk, Raheem may have to sit on the bench a little bit more. And so maybe that will spur him on to step up his game. I don't want to spend too much more time there. I want to talk about the two in midfield, Rahul, that completely impressed me. I think I was in love with the two of them for that entire game. That's Enzo Fernandez and Conor Gallagher. I don't want Conor Gallagher to leave. Let's talk about him first. The biggest thing that stands out to me, Rahul, is that last-ditch tackle where he's running back, stretches as far as he can. I think it was Mohamed Salah, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe it's somebody else, but he's able to wrap his foot around and get the. If he doesn't do that, that's goal, that's game. We're not getting a draw, and Liverpool build their confidence from there. But he was touted as a number 10 or maybe a number 8. He's been squeezed into the 6 or defensive, minded position. He's worked extremely hard in the gym all summer. I can see him physically fit. He looks stronger, faster. But Rahul, he's willing to do the dirty work that no one else is. And so far, at least in preseason and now, he's doing it as well as he can, and he's looking good doing it as well.
Yeah, this was the game where it started off slow for him, and maybe he was getting run by a little too often, and we were seeing that it doesn't work as that defending player, as in the pivot. But he gained confidence. That tackle you mentioned, Jacky, was one of the best moments for Chelsea in that game. And I'm saying a tackle in our own half was one of the best moments, but that was the importance of it, from him reading it, saying, I have to win the ball here. Even if I maybe foul him, I might just only get a yellow, because there was another player, I forget who it was, from Chelsea, close enough to maybe get that ball off of Salah. But he puts that tackle in, he reads it, he times it perfectly. And in that second half, he was maybe for 35, 40 minutes running that midfield in that position as the deeper player, where Liverpool couldn't really get by him, or would have to go on the outside, and they would run into our wing backs and our center backs. So I was really impressed with him. And the more I hear about him leaving, I'm like, makes me uncomfortable, because sure, you'll have a Caicedo ahead of him. You might even have a Lavia ahead of him. But you know what you'll get from him every single time when he comes in. And he doesn't have to play that 6. He could play where Carney was playing and do maybe even a better job with the pressing and creating havoc in that attacking piece. So he can play different positions. I'd like for him to stay and develop under Pochettino. And it seems like he has Pochettino's trust. So I really hope he stays.
I do too as well, because I think he's one that will be almost like a utility type player, Rahul. He can be a 6, he can be an 8, he can be a 10. You can press from the front, press from the back. He's the right type of profile you need in a smaller squad where you can play multiple positions. And if he doesn't start every single game, at least when he comes on, he's giving that 110% like we are used to in the old days of Chelsea, where somebody was excited to put on the blue shirt. But I want him to stay. I think you've said it good. Let's wrap it up on the Enzo Ferrari. I'm just kidding. Enzo Fernandez. We've known that he's a good player. He helped win the World Cup for Argentina in a brutally painful season last year. You mentioned flashes of brilliance. In this Liverpool game, again, started slow, but towards that second half, those flashes of brilliance really, really came out. And you're wondering, have Chelsea really found a diamond in the rough here?
Oh, I think we have a diamond. It's not even in the rough. We have a diamond, because maybe it's that number 8 shirt. Maybe it's having Connor do the dirty work and allowing Enzo to be free and express himself. But he was my man of the match. He was aggressive when he had to be. He was flashy when he had to be. He was a little aggressive in the sense that when there was an off-the-ball tackle or a confrontation, he was there as the guy that was giving it back to Jota. And everything he did was just classy. And you're looking at it and you're like, wow, if this is what we can get with a defensive midfielder behind him, we're in for a great season. And I bought his shirt this morning. I know you mentioned shirts and all of that. I bought his shirt in gold because based off of that and the fist bump, I'm fully behind him, and I'm really excited to see him. I shouldn't tell you, but I'm planning to bring him into my fantasy team.
There we go.
Just for the fact that I know we all get some flashy moments and maybe a goal or assist. But look, he's an exciting player. He's our player. You can see that the money we invested in him was for a reason. And not a single person is talking about the money. They're talking about how good he is and the potential that he's going to have for Chelsea. And that's credit to him and credit to the club.
It really is. And Rahul, I think the biggest thing I took away from that was, yes, there's some great forward momentum. Yes, he's coming back and defending. His touch is so beautiful, and he's able to control it and release it. But it is the quick first release that impressed me the most. I think you said it best. We didn't want to talk negative about some of our previous players in midfield, but for the last few years with Chelsea, it would come to the midfield and then just go back. It would come to the midfield, they would hold on to it, look left, look right, wonder what was going to happen, and then there would be no progression. So many times in that game, Enzo would play it back and you go, oh, is this going to happen? But he would move very slowly, or very gently, I should say, to maybe 2-3 steps to the right, 2-3 steps to the left, ask for it back immediately. And before anybody can close him down, he's on the turn and releasing that ball, whether it's a one touch or one touch and release. He's just aware of what's going around on the pitch. I could see him crossing the ball from the left wing to the right wing. He'd look up and say, oh, someone's running, in the case of Raheem or Chukwuemeka, and then he would just put a through ball in and say, go ahead and do something with it. And so I think with these situations, as everybody gets more comfortable with each other, you're going to start to see like, hey, Enzo is on the turn. I need to make my run because he's going to find me with these passes. And so I'm hopeful we're going to see more goals out of Chelsea this season. And Enzo himself, if he can get a couple goals, because he had a chance towards that second half where he was one-on-one with the keeper. Unfortunately, it hits the keeper. I'd love to see him chip in with a couple more goals here. But ultimately, Rahul, it ends 1-1. Not a bad opening game for Chelsea. Did you predict a 1-1? I think you had predicted. What was your prediction for this game?
I think I said it 2 or 3-1, but Feroz had said 1-1, and 7th draw in a row. So he was definitely right.
Yeah, so I'm definitely pleased. I think I don't want to lose on the opening day of the season, especially to a rival. I think with everything going on, it was decently heated. Maybe not the most heated match I've seen in a Liverpool-Chelsea fixture, but good to get, the first point on the board. Good for the team building confidence to kind of go up. I didn't see too many injuries or negative impact on this game. So from here, we kick on. I know you wanted
a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Before we move on, we didn't talk about one person. That's Levi Colwill, who was having a tough game against Mohamed Salah as a left back, essentially, because Chilwell was freed of his defensive duties. And he struggled. We have to be honest. He struggled for the first 30, 35 minutes. The goal comes from his end, where maybe Disasi loses his man as well. And both of them, I spoke about Disasi struggling and growing into it. But Levi Colwill struggled, and you could see even with the second goal that went in, he was very conscious of Salah and maybe not going in too hard or in his own mind where he was not doing what we know he can do. And again, second half, and Pochettino, Thiago Silva, 𝐟𝐵𝐶 James, Ben Chilwell, even maybe in this case, might have had a word, because we saw a complete opposite in that second half. So much so that Salah had to go off, wrapping himself out of his bandage or whatever he was, like an Egyptian mummy. And I just want to call that out, because Levi Colwill, number 26, John Terry tribute, we saw that in that second half. And I'm excited by what's to come.
I really am. And Rahul, the reason I didn't talk about him was, I think I had said this early on, is that if people are expecting Levi Colwill to have a 10-on-10, game every single week, you're mistaken. He's 20 years old. He's going to go through a lot of transition. He's practiced all preseason with a back four. We go to a back three randomly. And full respect to Mohamed Salah, he's a fantastic player. To play against him is not easy. So I think Levi will just learn from this and kind of grow from there. But just to wrap up my thoughts, I think Pochettino deserves credit, Rahul. I know you've mentioned maybe 𝐟𝐵 spoke to him, or maybe Ben spoke to him, or Thiago spoke to him. Maybe Pochettino had a team meeting at halftime and said, here are a few things I want you to do tactically to stop them attacking us, and we can try and do something better in that second half. So credit to him as well. All positivity. In the interest of time, I know we didn't talk about the substitutions, and I know we want to talk about some of the Premier League results, but let's move on to the West Ham preview. Let's keep this Chelsea positivity moving forward. West Ham have been a team that have sold their captain, maybe their best player of the season. They have their attacking midfielder, in this case, linked with Manchester City. His name is escaping me right now. They could lose him as well. They've talked about getting Gallagher from us, which is an interesting one. They've tried to sign Harry Maguire, which is another interesting one, and that's not working out for them as well. They're definitely a team in transition. They struggled a lot in the Premier League last season. They had the distraction of Europe that helped them win a trophy and kind of pick up their spirits. I'm expecting us to have an easier challenge against West Ham. Famous last words, it could be a completely tough game. Rahul, what do you make of it? And maybe do you want to take us to a predicted starting 11?
I do expect us to come out and get the job done. But again, it's West Ham at home, first game of the season for them at home. coming back as European champions, winning the Conference League, like you've mentioned. But they are going through a little bit of a transition. They've lost Declan Rice. They brought in Edson Alvarez, who was one of our targets maybe a year ago. And Lucas Paqueta, who's the one that's linked with Man City. Not sure if he plays. He did play last week, but with Kevin De Bruyne's injury that's been announced, is Paqueta getting close to leaving? We don't know. So that's where I think we, with Caicedo making his debut, maybe even Lavia making his debut if it's officially announced, we'll just have too much in that midfield. And you could see the boys were disappointed by drawing that first game against Liverpool, where they'll want to come out and get that first win on the board and get that going with the 3 points. So I expect us to win, but you just don't know in the Premier League, and the refereeing decision or something goes wrong in the early part, and we're fighting to come back into the game. But let's stay positive. We've done a good job so far, and let's hope that we can get this one. So I think Sanchez in goal. I do think we go back to the back four.
Okay.
Reece James, Thiago Silva, Levi Colwill, and Ben Chilwell. Midfield of Caicedo, Enzo.
You think Caicedo makes his debut?
Oh, 100%.
But it's about 115 million for him to sit on the bench, huh?
No. And we need him, right? I mean, look, Gallagher was great, but it's away from home. We need that defensive player in there. So I'm almost wondering if it's going to be a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-3-3. But based on the fact that we've seen the 4-2-3-1, I'll go with Enzo and Caicedo, which would bring Enzo a little bit further back, but maybe he'll have the freedom with Caicedo there. And then the front three of Raheem Sterling.
Yes.
Carney, Mudryk, and Jackson.
Okay, so Mudryk will come on and start this game. Carney slots into the middle, and then Raheem Sterling keeps his place on the right. I think you hit the points on the head. Jackson is our out-and-out striker, so he's most likely going to start every game till we find 𝐥𝐤𝐤 back, or Olise comes in, or maybe Broja's back from his injury. But Rahul, what are you expecting from this game? Are you expecting it to be feisty? Are you expecting us to blow them over 3-0? What's your score prediction? What's kind of your vibe for the entire game?
It will be feisty. It is the first London derby of the year, and so I do expect West Ham to come out fighting, to want to put in a good performance for their fans, but our quality should shine through. So I will go for 2-0 to Chelsea.
I'm trying to think last season how many times we predicted a 2-0. I don't think we could even stomach the thought of scoring 2 goals and conceding none. But listen, this season, this is how quickly football changes. You get the right manager in, you get the right tactics in, you get the right exciting players in, and that may be the case. Well, I'm going to be a little more aggressive. I'm going to go for 3-0. I want to see goals galore. I want to get excited. I want to see maybe a couple of these defenders, Thiago Silva, score for my fantasy team so I can get some points there as well. So 3-0, and we put West Ham to bed, and we continue on from there because we got to start this season on a high.
We do, and burst that West Ham bubble, no pun intended. But look, either way, as long as we get the win, get that going, get that on the board, we can move ahead to some of the other fixtures. And I believe in that Liverpool game, the commentator said Chelsea have, I don't know, supercomputer or something predicted the easiest start to the season. So we might as well take advantage of that and build on that. But that wraps it up, guys. Thank you very much for listening. Please continue to subscribe, like, and follow us. It's at the Premier Chelsea on all podcast providers, Instagram, and on Twitter, it's at Premier Chelsea. So definitely drop us a follow. And we will be back with a new episode. But until then, stay safe and up the Chelsea.